So every single object in IFC must be classified as an IFC class. There are lots of IFC classes, and in the newest version of the BlenderBIM add-on, if I create an object and it doesn't yet belong to an IFC class, if I go to the object panels, you can see that it's asking for an IFC object to be applied. And you can also do this through the scene panel if you want to do it all in bulk. So if I have many objects, I can select them all, and then I can choose a particular class from this drop down here, and then click Assign IFC class. But I can also do it one at a time by having a particular object selected. So there are various types of classes, and classes belong to products. So by default, most of the products you're going to be creating belong to IFC element. This is a single instance or a single object, such as a wall, a door, a column, a beam, a window, things like that. There are other types as well which you can create, which I won't go through right now. Type elements are things like door types or wall types. So very often you're going to have 10 doors, all of the same type in a building, and that particular door type might be, let's say, 2.1 meters high, 0.95 meters wide, for example. And you're going to go to your door manufacturer and you're going to say, I want to order 10 of these because I have this particular door type. So if I click on element style, you can see here the various types of classes that you can assign to type objects. So I might, given my door example, I might choose door type, for example. There are a few other things. There are spatial elements. Now, these are not actual physical elements like walls and doors. These are things like buildings and sites and zones and rooms. Rooms is IFC space, by the way, or areas, and a building story. And external areas like outdoor landscaped areas, such as a garden. Then you have groups, which there are various types of ways you can group objects. You can group a series of objects and call it a particular maintainable asset. You can call it something part of a structural system, which these features are a little bit less polished, so I might delay that for a little bit. And you can group spaces into zones. So for example, a series of rooms can make up a MEP, mechanical air zone or something like that. I'm not trained as a mechanical engineer, so forgive me if my terminology is inaccurate. There are certain types of structural objects you can also assign. For example, if you're building an analytical model for structural analysis, you can define whether there are certain members, such as single lines which connect to each other to represent beams, as well as connections between them and what their various constraints and loadings are. Finally, there's context as well. Right now, there's only 2 to choose from. You can have, there are 2 types. The most common one is a project, and a project is for any, will cover the majority of the cases, which is when you're actually building a building. A project library is essentially a kit of parts or preset wall library or window library that you can reuse again and again. It's basically like an asset library or component library. There's various terminology. Finally, there's annotation. Currently, there's only one type in annotation, which is IFC annotation itself. This is used for documentation. So that way you can actually store the 2D lines or even 3D lines, which represent dimensions and section markers and labels and text and things like that inside your IFC file. There used to be a lot more, but Building Smart decided that it wasn't, appropriate. So there's current discussion about how that might proceed. But in most scenarios, you'll be using IFC element, and there's a whole series of classes that you can choose from here. And you'll notice that when you pick one, if I click slab, for example, the predefined type changes. So every single class has what's called a series of predefined types. And predefined types let you give another level of specificity to the class. So what type of slab is it? Is it a floor slab? Is it a roof slab? A landing slab, such as for a stair, a base slab at the bottom of the building, or you can have your own particular type of slab. Or you can just say, look, we're not going to define it, so you leave it as not defined. And if you choose user defined, a new element will pop up here, which you can type in whatever you want. And this will be project specific, or if you have a government requirement, they might, or client requirement, they might tell you what to put in here. So you can, none of these classes are tied to geometry, so any geometry can be called any class. And this is a bit different from other BIM programs where there's a tight correlation with the type of the object and its geometry of the object. In Blender, you don't have that restriction, so a wall can be any particular element. So I can assign a class, and once I've assigned it, you'll see now I can access all the properties of that class. You can see it's renamed to IFC solar device in this case, and the predefined type has been set as a solar collector.